Well, good evening. Welcome to Facebook. I'm Rick Dancer. This is Get Real with Rick Dancer. Tonight we are going to get real. I have a super big treat for you. My friend Bill Harris and I have been working on this for a while. And one of the things we want to make sure that everybody understands is, that this is a community, this is a conversation. And so let me just bring Bill on. And I know him from the police department. He's one of the coolest dudes ever. There he is. That's Bill Harris. Old time Eugene people, they know Bill because you were a police officer, and I'll say this: you were kind of a big deal. You were a resource officer at the school, right?
Yes.
One of the first.
Well, no, actually, we had a program that started I think, in the 70s, and that went kaput. And then we started another program in the 80s. So I was on the.
Those are people.
I was on the.
Those are people.
Yeah, so I was on the second program, the one
Okay.
that's current to the day.
Okay.
And before we get started, I would just like to offer a prayer for America from the Baha'i Sacred Writings, and I'd like to do that now, if I may.
You most certainly may.
O thou kind Lord, this gathering is turning to thee. These hearts are radiant with thy love. These minds and spirits are exhilarated by the message of thy glad tidings. O God, let this American democracy become glorious in spiritual degrees, even as it has aspired to material degrees, and render this just government victorious. Confirm this revered nation to uphold the standards of the oneness of humanity, to promulgate the most great peace, to become thereby most glorious and praiseworthy among all the nations of the world. O God, this American nation is worthy of thy favors and is deserving of thy mercy. Make it precious and near to thee through thy bounty and bestowals. Abdul Baha.
So Bill is of the Baha'i faith, living in Roseburg now, and you're down there kind of setting up the. Do you call it a church when it's Baha'i?
Well, no. I mean, we are unique, and we're down there setting up activities in the Roseburg community, and that's my granddaughter just said hi.
She's welcome. So, Bill, I don't have a real big plan for this.
Sure.
And I think it's really good to have a white guy and a black guy just having a conversation about this. And let's start with defunding police. Just talk to me about that.
Well, as we all know, it seems like the people on the left have a lousy job with labeling. We don't do labeling right. There are a lot of calls that police officers never want to respond to, but nobody else will. And so the problem is that police officers wind up being dispatched to calls that we're not able really and trained to actually deal with. And we get calls sometimes from mental health workers that tell us, well, so-and-so is out of control, he's suicidal, and you guys need to go and do a welfare check on him or her. That's not a call you want to go on. That's not a call you want to deal with.
And that's not all types of. It's not a call you're trained to deal with.
Absolutely. And so consequently, I'm hoping that what defund the police means is that they're trying to put resources into responses other than police for calls like that. Unfortunately, the reality is not only do you have to raise up these resources, but you have to maintain the police response until such time as the people who are being raised up feel comfortable enough with responding to those types of calls. And many of those calls are still going to require police officers to respond with those people. So consequently, you're not talking about defunding the police. In actuality, you're talking about increasing the funding to both programs so that as people get stood up, the police can gradually back away from those types of calls when people feel more comfortable doing it. So it's going to wind up as an increase in funding as opposed to decreasing the funding. But I think it's really a way of people trying to say we need to reallocate the job that police are doing to other providers.
Let's talk about the Black Americans and police, and what do you see as an officer when you were there? What did you see in terms of is there? I don't even know how to ask it, Bill. You know what to say. you just this. Okay. I'm trying to listen more.
I'm going to come at this as both a Baha'i and a police officer. I see the problem in the United States as a spiritual problem.
Okay.
And spiritual problems only have spiritual solutions.
What's a spiritual problem? What is it?
When I'm saying about it's a spiritual problem, it's because it's going to take people realizing who we are. The Baha'i faith says we are all the leaves of one fruit of one tree and the leaves of one branch. If we don't see each other as equal, as deserving of mutual respect, and as being a person that wants to lift up everyone collectively and share in the bounty that's been given to us on this planet, then we're never going to solve the problems of this planet. We're all in this together.
So how do we do that, Bill? Because I think you've heard me talk, and because you're hanging out with me, and you and I have known each other for 100 years. One of the things that's really frustrating for me as a white guy is when somebody says, "Well, Rick, you have white privilege, so you can't ask those questions." And it's like, well, I understand the concept of white privilege as well as I can, and I'm sure I don't understand it like you would. But it's like, I need to be able to do this so I can learn. If I'm not hanging out with Black Americans, if I'm not hanging out with Latino Americans, if I'm not in that congregation too, and me as a white guy, if I'm not including you in that circle at the table, let's say we're all having dinner together. I feel like sometimes that I'm sitting at the table and I'm so afraid to say anything because it's going to be taken the wrong way. And I would bet that you feel the same way. I don't know.
Well, Rick, I don't care anymore.
Really?
That's the difference. That's the difference between you and I.
I just love Bill.
I don't care anymore whether I'm taken the wrong way or not. It doesn't really matter. I haven't been, I've made mistakes over the course of my life. Everybody has. But I hope that people will really see who I am and what I'm trying to communicate, and maybe just try to get a finger on my pulse and say, okay, I think this guy means well, and let's help him. Some people won't, but the reality is, I don't think that most people in this country realize is what is the legacy of over 400 years of African American and other minorities in this nation. What has been the legacy? And how do we overcome that legacy? There are people in this country that are born on third base and think they hit a triple. There are other people that are born on second base and think they hit a double. There are other people that are born on first base and think they hit a single. And there are some people that are in the dugout, not even at bat. So when you're born, if the process of your birth automatically creates disparity, then how can things be equal? What do we have to do in order to at least level the playing field so that everybody in our society start out with at least the possibility of achieving something? How do we do that?
I don't know, Bill. I just don't. How do we? I mean, is Black Lives Matter is that the beginning? Is that the process? Is that tell me? I feel like I'm sitting here with my You're not old enough to be my grandpa, but I want to know. I want to know what can I do to be. I want to keep my voice in the conversation, but I get sometimes I feel like I'm being pushed back, and I don't have to control the conversation. I just want to be, you know,
Yeah. Black Lives Matter is a spontaneous response to what we perceive and the Black community as being a disparate justice system. And of course, the response from the majority is, well, white lives matter too, blue lives matter too, whatever. No one in Black Lives Matter have ever said that any other life doesn't matter. What we're saying is it appears that Black lives matter less than everybody else. Right. And brown lives matter less. But yet the immediate response is that, well, these other lives matter just as much. And the only thing I say to those people is, if a police officer is killed, the person immediately is arrested. And in all probability, that person is convicted. If a Black man is abused or killed, maybe the police officers are arrested, and in many cases, a jury acquits them. That's the message. Yeah, that's the message. So
when you see here in Eugene, and I don't know what your opinion is, but Dee Dee Hall the name was taken off. And you were on a conversation I was having with that. And the thing that kind of bugs me a little bit about that, and you already know this, is that he did something in the past, but then he started doing all these other things for other minority groups too. And then it's kind of, I guess what's kind of scary to me is one of the people I had on the show was saying, what happened to redemption? And I used to think certain things about people of color when I was younger, because I grew up in a town where there was 2 Black people, and I remember their names in my high school. And they were both great people. I didn't have anything disparaging to say about them. But compared to today, the only reason I see you as a Black man is because you're somebody who can help me through this. Other than that, I used to hug you when you were a police officer in the hallways of the thing as a journalist, and journalists aren't supposed to do that, but I did it because I loved you. I didn't care. So how, on something like Dee Dee Hall, how do we, or are we overgoing our steps? Talk to me.
Well, Rick, one thing I can ask you is the renaming of Dee Dee Hall, whether it's justified or not, as traumatic as watching the video of Mr. Floyd being killed?
Right, no.
It's all a matter of perspective. What has the white race lost, or anybody lost, if the hall is renamed? I'm not saying whether it's right or wrong. I'm just saying that it appears as though the least action taken by a group of people is met with all types of protestations. And yet, when somebody dies on television, and you see it.
So
why? Yeah.
As a Black man, when you saw that happening, what did that it did something different to you than it would do? I thought it was appalling, but you see.
I hope it didn't. I hope it didn't do anything different to me than it did to anybody else who saw it.
But I don't look at that and think that could be me.
Well, in that respect, but it could be. If this is allowed to continue, if you take a position, and there have been people that are taking up positions that are pro-Black in the civil rights movement. 3 people in Philadelphia, Mississippi. 2 of them were white.
Right. So it really does. I like how you talk about this because, with Baha'i and I think, honestly, if you were to look in the Christian faith and other faiths too, it really is about unity. It's supposed to be about unity. We should all be pulling in this thing together. How do we get there, Bill? How do we, or at least start that process? You know,
Well, the first we have to do is understand what is the result of this.
okay.
Has been the result of these 400 years? And when you start looking in these communities of color and also some of the poor communities, you'll see one common thread running through these communities, I think, is the actual death of hope in those communities. These people do not feel that there's any way out.
Somebody's
Any
asked.
way out. Yeah. And what if it was a black cop that killed George Floyd? Would we be here? I mean, I guess that's what he's saying.
Yeah.
I hope so. I hope so. Because it's the system that is killing George Floyd and others. It is the system.
Don't you think
I would
that?
hope.
Don't you think that? Like at least here in Oregon, we know mental health. We keep overlooking, like with the defunding the police and stuff. Mental health is a huge issue in Oregon that we can no longer overlook.
Right.
In terms of people and what we're doing. I think that it's raising, it has been raising to the top for a long time, but we keep pushing it back down. And that's something I think needs to be taken care of and looked at desperately.
Well, yeah, it appears as though we don't want to divert the financial resources to that. And you remember in the 80s when we went from an organized statewide mental health system to community-based mental health treatment, outpatient treatments. That's basically what happened under the Reagan administration.
Right.
And so we put people that really were all right if they were on their medications and able to function in the community. The problem was it was when they were off their medications, they became a problem.
So,
and so we started. Good.
So let me ask you that because I told you a couple things I was going to ask you about. So you saw this thing in Lincoln County where they were making a mask. This one just blew me away, Bill, and I know it did you too. They make a mask, an ordinance that you have to wear a mask in a public place, but not if you're a person of color. And then they wonder why they get blowback because one, isn't that kind of racist in itself? And then two, you're then saying that people of color, when they wear a mask, look like a. I mean, it just. What you tell me what you think?
Well, first off, if what the people who are talking about the pandemic are saying is true, what we're saying actually is that the people who are most likely to have this virus are people of color.
Yeah.
And wearing a mask actually is not for the protection of the person wearing the mask, but for the person who is wearing the mask to protect the other people that are interacting with that person. So if I wear a mask, I am telling you that I respect you enough that I want to protect you. And I would hope that if you wear a mask, you're doing it for the same reason, not that you're thinking that it's, anything other than that. People that wear the mask are wearing the mask, especially the cloth mask, are wearing the mask to protect others around them. And I don't know why we're not that considerate of one another.
What is your concern, Bill, in terms of the Black community? I have a nephew who's married to a Black woman, and he and I were talking the other day. He says this is really hard for us because it's and the interracial it's bringing them things to light and up and it. But we can. Go ahead. I'm trying to listen.
Well, this issue is this is really what it's all about. Why do I care who someone else is married to? Why do I care if someone else has found happiness with someone? Why do I care? How in the world is that affecting me? I don't understand why people are responding to this, but they are. So what I say to people is fall on your knees because Baha'is believe that we were all created from the same dust and that no one should lord his or herself above another. And if you can't accept that as a ticket to being a citizen of this country and the world, then you have a serious problem. And that problem is going to continue until we either kill each other or we fall on our knees before God and ask for forgiveness.
Because it really is interesting that we still are dealing with this today. I mean, 400 years later, but how many years later after Martin Luther King? How many? We're still dealing with these same things about skin and even sexual orientation. All these different issues that come up. Um, it is. Raymond says here: money, religion, skin color, gender, sexual preference. Just a lot of disgusting people that are self-centered. Maybe not selfish, but we just can't get past labeling people, and it doesn't do us any good.
Now we need to learn how to love people. It's a friend of mine once came to me, thought he was doing me a favor, and said, "I don't see you as black." And then this it's prevalent. You see, love sees no color, and I reject all of that. What I say is, I love the colors that I see.
Yeah.
When you walk into a garden and you see this panoramic garden with alive with all these vivid colors, and you walk into another garden that's monochrome, which lifts your heart?
Yeah. Bill, I love that. I think back when I was a news guy and I was, trailing around going, getting interviews with Bill Harris, that's where Bill and I go back way back. And I thought, I always was, told as a white guy that I'm supposed to, that I don't see color. And yet I love what you're saying because I love that you're a black man. I think it doesn't make you more or less lovely to me, but I think it's cool. I don't think it's something I don't look beyond it and go, I need to see Bill below his skin. Well, that's not really natural. I do see your heart. And I think a lot of people on here are seeing your heart because people on here love you, Bill. I knew they would, because you're a gentle, kind soul. And I think you really do have, I think you have but you were always like this, I mean.
But see, Rick, you're seeing a side of me, but don't ask some of the people I arrested.
Yeah. Well, you were a cop, so you had a profession, but you were always gentle with people. So for people to, what would you like if you were just to give some advice to, I don't know if you're comfortable with that, but I'm asking as a white guy, what can I do? What can I do to help? That's all I can come up with is what can I do to help?
Well, there's a big issue going around about reparations and, giving money to African Americans to actually offset the 40 acres and a mule that some people believe that Black African Americans were promised at the end of slavery. Giving money to people as retribution to what has happened in the past is, in my opinion, just wrong.
Okay.
One, the dominant society controls all the financial institutions, and consequently, that money will eventually trickle back to the dominant society, regardless of whether or not it's given to African Americans. So that's not really the solution. What has to be the solution is that we have to correct what has gone wrong. And one of the only things you can give to African Americans and other disadvantaged minorities is something that can't be taken away from them, and that's education. Now, you can't take away education. You have to eliminate the difference between poor people and people of color and the rest of the majority. You have to actually start a program a pre-K to through 19. I mean, there has to be a program where we're allowing people to actively compete in a way that helps the struggle in this country to be eradicated. And that's not going to happen overnight. That's not going to happen in my lifetime. That's not going to happen probably for decades. But yet, every time we do this, what we hear is that's reverse racism. And when I hear that statement, I laugh because racism is a train moving down the track. And what does physics tell us? We need to have a force equal to that train to stop it. And to reverse it, we need to have a greater force. Yeah, it's reverse racism. That's what is needed to correct the wrongs of centuries.
So, what do you hope?
What do I hope?
What do you hope?
I hope that we can, this is a cycle. I've seen it happen over and over and over again. We're in a cycle again. Um, Black people react, minorities have. We're seeing more majority Americans walking with us. There's retribution, and then we shut it down violently or whatever. Then money is thrown at the African American community and other communities until someone yells, just like in the 70s, the Bakke decision, oh, that's reverse racism. And so then it all kind of just dies away again. And then the cycle begins again. This is the cycle that we live through. And so consequently, unless we break this cycle, we figure out a way to actually do something that doesn't involve uh, throwing money at people, but actually involves improving the conditions of our society, it's just going to repeat itself and get more and more violent. That's my opinion. So
Bill,
there's a solution.
okay, what?
I said there's the solution.
Right.
We have to break the cycle.
And so, I'm just going to offer, like, to me, it's always been, it feels like if, like with you and me or somebody, if I know people, and I can put a face and have a relationship with someone in the Latino community or different, and not going out and looking for Black friends and brown friends. I'm not talking about that. I'm saying when you actually start understanding people, and like you said, look beyond your differences, but or celebrate the different colors. But I mean, when you and I get together, what do we find we have in common? Well, number one, we absolutely loved your wife, who has gone on to the next thing. But we both loved her dearly. But we also had friends in the police force. We both had the same ideas about how we treat people. So we became friends. And maybe, and I know that's really simplistic, but that's kind of how I am. I think the more people understand, Bill, here's kind of my whole thought in life. If I'm here and God puts me on this earth and says, here's your life. Do you want to have an interesting life or do you want to have a boring life? Well, I want an interesting life. Okay. Right now, most of my friends in my world right now are former felons who've been to prison, and some of them are sex offenders, some of them are other things. These are all people that have been put into my life. And I'm starting to understand the world and going, I need to get involved with sponsors, what they're doing, how they're people, because now I'm in that world like that. So inviting different kinds of people into my life to make it a better story, to make it a more interesting life. And a lot of people like yourself have played parts in that, where I think I've learned from that. So maybe maybe people just have to try harder to understand what other people are thinking and hang out with them. Do something.
I think we don't even understand ourselves.
Yeah.
I really think. I think this, and I'm reminded of a story. I had the joy of running into LeVar Burton in all places at Liberty Elementary School in Albany.
Really? What was he doing there?
Well, my daughter-in-law teaches there, and also he was there because he was talking about reviving Reading Rainbow.
Uh,
And I had just purchased the 40th anniversary of the Roots, where he played the young Kunta Kinte. And I remember a story about that miniseries is one of the first that came on. And in corporate board and Roots, the ABC was looking for sponsors for that miniseries, allegedly. And in corporate boardrooms all across the United States, people were saying that, oh, I don't think white people are going to watch that miniseries. So we shouldn't invest in that. And if you look at the way that miniseries came on, what you saw was unions and other people who were advertising on that show.
right.
And the third day, the third episode, I remember the announcer coming on. We are proud to present the most watched event in television history. And all those people who were sitting in those boardrooms who missed an opportunity to have their message streaming into millions of homes because they didn't understand that their fellow white people, even though they thought they were above it, they would watch it, but they didn't think white people would watch it. I mean, the rank and file white people. Every time I went to work, I heard somebody ask me about the episode. I mean, we watched it. And so that was when corporate America began to understand that they needed to listen to Black voices because it was making money for them.
Right.
It would make money for them. So when I remember that story and I realized that some white people think, oh, well, I'm good, but everybody else is bad, and everybody will, jump on me if I try to say something, so to remain silent.
You know, do you remember Henry Levert?
Oh yeah, I remember Henry. I love Henry.
For me, I had to really try, and I had to get to know him because the first time I was there, I walked up as a reporter, and he looked at me. He says, "You think you know what a black man thinks, Rick Dancer?" And I went, "I don't." I was kind of, I was hey, with two black people in my whole school. He says, "You want to find out what a black man thinks? Hang around a black man," and he kind of educated me because I ended up doing stories with him on stuff, and he was right. If I wanted to know what a black man or a black person was like, I needed to hang around a black person. I did that one time at the Eugene City Club. I think I kind of surprised them a little, and they asked me. I was just before I was there. I was a reporter, and they said, "Come give us a gift for this for Christmas. They'd have you give a gift." So I said, "My gift is the free lunch program." It goes like this: if you think you don't like black people, take a black person to lunch. If you think you don't like gay people, take a gay person to lunch. If you don't like a lesbian, take a lesbian to lunch. If you don't like a Democrat, take a Democrat to lunch. If you don't like a Republican, take a Republican to lunch. If you don't like and you go through the litany of people. And I said, and then the best part is you pay the bill. And there's no government program. There's no money coming in. Nobody's going to do this for you. You pay the bill. And that is the free lunch program. And they were all just sitting there stunned. And I went, "Oh my God, Rick, I think you're on to something." And maybe if people have a problem and they don't understand, rather than spouting off on the media or coming up with their solutions, this is how I see it. Maybe we just need to take a big. I heard a black man. And local people told me, "You're not supposed to call me an African American anymore because I'm not from Africa. I'm from America." So I'm calling people black people now because that's what they told me to do. So I'm listening and doing this. But I heard a black guy this morning on the internet. Really cool dude. He was alongside Martin Luther King's son, and there was a bunch of different people. And this is one of the things he was speaking. And he was on there, and he just said, people need to just listen more. They need to pay attention to what other people are saying. And I thought it was just such a profound thing to talk about and to say.
Yeah, I believe that, but the problem is that there's a whole spectrum of black people and gay people and other people. And there's some that will talk to you and some that just don't even want to look at you.
Right.
And so consequently, the people that you're interacting with may not really tell you the depth of the anger and the pain that exists in the inner cities or at the depth of poverty. You know, I grew up in an inner city, but when I came to Oregon, there was really no inner city in Eugene. I came to go to school here. There was no inner city. There was neighborhoods where there were, you know, obviously people who had lesser means lived, and there were middle class neighborhoods and upper class neighborhoods. But there was nothing like Albina and Portland and Eugene. None of those things existed. So, you know, it's different in places like Eugene.
Right.
But when you grow up in Philadelphia, where I lived, and you could go from days without seeing a white face unless it was the merchant at one of the stores or somebody who came into the neighborhood to collect bills. That was what we saw.
Yeah. And in Oregon, even Portland does have obviously a much larger Black community, but even we don't have anything compared to like what you're talking about, Philadelphia, Chicago,
Right.
places like that, where it's there's a whole culture. I remember a lady was telling me she went to Washington D.C. This was many years ago, and she said that a friend of hers was Black and was driving her to a certain place. She said, "Now you can't get out and walk in this. This is a Black neighborhood, and you don't want to be walking here by yourself." And she was like, she's from Oregon, and she's like, "What are you talking about?" She goes, "You don't want to be doing this." But so, Bill, to wrap this up first, thank you so much for being a calming force in a storm. And I think people, you know, they all love you, and they're just sitting here listening. But I think it's just nice to have a conversation and show people that you can do this. Do you want to leave us with anything that's just a typical Bill Harris thing? It's my audience. It's my thing. You can do whatever the hell you want. Nobody's paying for it.
Yeah, I really think that we all sit back and we ask ourselves, what legacy do we want to leave to our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren? What world do we want to leave them? Do we want to leave them with a world full of strife? Do we want to leave them with a world where groups of people are at each other's throats? Or do we want to leave them on a world that is advancing towards what Jesus taught everyone to pray for in his prayer? Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Is that the legacy that we want to leave our kids, or something else? When we are trying to establish the kingdom of God on earth as it is in heaven, that's the legacy I want to leave to my great-grandson.
Yeah, that's way better than a stupid statue or your damn name on a building. You know what I mean?
What I want to leave to my great-grandkids.
What's a legacy? A legacy is not a building or a statue. A legacy is what you leave behind in love. And that prayer goes on to say, and forgive those my debtors as those who go against me. And maybe us all need to forgive each other and try to move on from this.
Yeah, but that is the foundation of the kingdom of God on earth as it is in heaven. All else flows from that. And if we're working toward that, then all else will fall into place.
Bill, you are a lovely man. You're just a loving, gentle. I wish if I was there, I'd be hugging you. I'd be hugging you right now.
Well, Rick, I just wanted to leave. If I could leave you with a little story about Siri Carr.
Yeah, dude, I love it.
Siri Carr and I went back to Philadelphia, and we're sitting on my sister.
That's Bill's wife, so they know who you are.
Yeah, we went back to Philadelphia, and we're sitting on a porch, and we're about half a block away, and my family was sitting there, and and I was gone. I had gone someplace, and she was with my family, and she started to walk down the steps, and he says, "Where are you going?" She says, well, I'm just going to the store. And they said, no, you aren't. We're going with you. Just to walk a half a block. And she looked at them and said, I can go to the store. They said, no, you can't. You're his wife, and we're going to take care of you.
Wow. Bill, good luck in Roseburg.
Thank you.
And so if you're one of our viewers from Roseburg and you see Bill around, go give him a hug and tell him where you saw him. And if he's coming to you and saying, hey, we've got these programs going to help people unify and come together, you can trust him. I vouch for that man. He would vouch for me anytime, and I would vouch for him anytime. So Bill, don't be a stranger. And anytime I say something wrong, please correct me, okay?
Well, Rick, if you say something wrong, I'm going to look at your heart and know it's in the right place.
And I love you for that. But also, I want you to then personal message me and say, Rick, you might want to not do this, this, and this. So I know, because I want to be the best that I can be, just like you. And
I'm not the best that I can be. So
well, we're working
who am I? Yeah, I'm working. We're both working on it.
We're in progress.
We're works in progress.
Bill, here's the thing. God better get busy because we don't have a lot of progress left here.
Well, God will work in God's time.
I've learned that. And he's
God will work in God's time. And sometimes we have to be down on our knees before we can recognize the word of God.
Yeah, I agree. Bill,
I mean, remember.
I love you dearly. I love you dearly, man. Go back and look at the comments, because a lot of people here worked with you and know you and are saying nice things, so you should go look at it. And thank you, Bill. I'll see you later. So you guys, if you saw that and it's something that touched you, and share it on your page, because you never know who's looking and just needs some comfort, needs something different besides what's going on all over the internet. And yeah, I knew that was going to be golden, because he's golden. Have a great night. I will see you on Monday. That is my birthday, so I am expecting lots of gifts from all of you. If you need to know how, don't spend anything less than $100. I'm kidding, but I will be back on Monday. My wife's taking me away for a long weekend, so I'm going to go hang out and do some other things. Thank you again, Bill. You're out there in the hinterland somewhere. Thank you, buddy. We appreciate you. All right, guys. See you later. Have a good weekend.